that most students of this teaching spend years trying to manifest through sheer force of will when they could be commanding their subconscious mind with surgical precision. This is mind control in its purest form. Not control over others, not manipulation of circumstances, but absolute control over your own consciousness, specifically control over the mechanism through which your subconscious mind receives and executes its orders. And when you understand this principle, when you learn to use it with intention, manifestation becomes inevitable, not hoped for, not wished for, inevitable. Because you will have discovered the master key that unlocks your subconscious mind's creative power without resistance, without delay, without question. Let me begin by revealing something most never realize. Your subconscious mind is being commanded every moment of every day. Not by your affirmations alone, not by your visualizations only, but by something far more subtle, far more persistent, far more powerful. Questions. The questions you ask yourself, whether consciously or unconsciously, are commands to your subconscious mind. And your subconscious, being the obedient servant that it is, must answer them. It has no choice. When you ask yourself, why can't I ever succeed? Your subconscious mind hears that as a command. Show me reasons why I cannot succeed. And it obeys faithfully, immediately, without question. It will search through your memories, your experiences, your perceptions, and it will present you with evidence, proof, seemingly undeniable proof, that you cannot succeed. Not because the evidence was always there, but because you commanded your subconscious to find it. When you ask, what's wrong with me? Your subconscious hears, find everything that is deficient, lacking, broken within me. And it does. It will compile a complete inventory of every flaw, every failure, every limitation, real or imagined, and present it to you as truth. Because that's what you asked for. Do you see what's happening? You are commanding your subconscious mind all day long through the questions you ask. And your subconscious, being the faithful servant, delivers exactly what you've requested. Most people are giving their subconscious mind commands to prove their limitations, to confirm their fears, to validate their unworthiness. And they wonder why their life reflects exactly that. But tonight, you're going to learn to reverse this. You're going to learn to ask questions that command your subconscious to prove your power, confirm your success, validate your worthiness. And when you do this, when you master the art of the properly formed question, manifestation cannot be stopped. Let me show you how this works. Your subconscious mind is not a reasoning mind. It does not analyze, does not judge, does not question. It simply accepts and executes. When you make a statement, an affirmation, your conscious mind often interferes. It says, but is this true? Where's the evidence? This doesn't match my current reality. And that doubt, that questioning, that resistance weakens the impression on your subconscious. But when you ask a question, particularly one that assumes the desired state is already true, something fascinating happens. Your conscious mind cannot resist it, because a question doesn't demand belief. It only demands an answer. And your subconscious mind, hearing the question, immediately goes to work finding or creating an answer. When you ask, why am I so fortunate? Your subconscious doesn't argue. It doesn't say, but you're not fortunate. It simply begins searching for evidence of your fortune. And what it searches for, it finds. Or if it doesn't find it, it creates it. This is the principle. What you seek, you find. What you ask for, you receive. Not because the universe is generous, but because consciousness creates reality. And a properly formed question directs consciousness with absolute precision. Now let me connect this to everything I've taught you about assumption. I've told you many times, you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You must dwell in the state of already being what you desire to be. You must think from the end, not of the end. But here's what most miss. You can encode these assumptions into questions. Instead of affirming, I am wealthy, and fighting with the doubt that arises, you can ask, why am I so abundantly provided for? Do you feel the difference? The statement, I am wealthy, might trigger resistance. No, you're not. Look at your bank account. But the question, why am I so abundantly provided for, triggers a search. Let me find the evidence. Let me notice the provision. Let me recall the blessings. And in that search, in that noticing, you are dwelling in the consciousness of provision. You are assuming abundance by the very act of asking the question. The question itself is an assumption. When you ask, how did I manifest this so easily? You are assuming it's already done. You are assuming ease. You are assuming success. And your subconscious, hearing this assumption in the form of a question, begins to align your thoughts, your feelings, your perceptions, your actions with the reality where that question makes sense. It must close the gap between the question and the answer. And in closing that gap, it creates the manifestation. Here's why questions are so powerful. They create what I call an open loop in consciousness. Your subconscious mind abhors an open loop. It feels incomplete, unfinished, like a story with no ending. So when you ask a question, especially one that assumes your desire is already fulfilled, your subconscious becomes obsessed with closing that loop. It will work day and night, consciously and unconsciously, to find or create an answer that satisfies the question. If you ask, why is everything working out perfectly for me? Your subconscious must find an answer. It must close the loop. It must prove the assumption embedded in the question. And in its search to close that loop, it rearranges your perceptions, your thoughts, your focus, your very reality, until the answer becomes obvious, undeniable, manifest. This is why questions are so effective, where affirmations sometimes fail. An affirmation can be rejected. I am successful. No, I'm not. But a question cannot be rejected. It demands an answer. And in seeking that answer, the mind must dwell in the assumption that makes the question valid. Why am I so successful? Forces your mind to assume success in order to answer the question. There's no way around it. An assumption persisted in becomes fact. Now, not all questions work this way. You must understand how to form them properly. A disempowering question like, why can't I ever get ahead? Is perfectly formed to command your subconscious to prove your limitation. But we want the opposite. We want questions that command your subconscious to prove your power, your abundance, your fulfillment. So the properly formed question must contain these elements. First, it must assume the desired state is already true. Not will I become wealthy, but why am I so wealthy? Not can I manifest love, but why is love flowing to me so effortlessly? Not how do I get successful, but how did I become so successful? Do you see? The question assumes the end is already accomplished. And in assuming, it commands your subconscious to prove that assumption. Second, the question must evoke feeling. Remember, I've told you, feeling is the secret. Consciousness without feeling is sterile, impotent, unable to create. So your questions must not be dry, intellectual exercises. They must stir something within you. Why do I feel so deeply loved? Makes you search for the feeling of being loved. How is it that joy flows through every area of my life? Makes you notice joy, dwell in joy, become joy. The question evokes the feeling, and the feeling impresses the subconscious, and the impression becomes manifestation. Third, the question must be asked from the state you wish to occupy. This is crucial. You're not asking as the person who lacks. You're asking as the person who has. You're not asking, why don't I have money, from a state of poverty. You're asking, why am I so abundantly provided for, from a state of wealth consciousness. The question comes from the end, from the fulfilled state, from the identity you're claiming. And when you ask from that state, you are already dwelling in it. The question itself is the dwelling. So how do you use this in your daily practice? First, become aware of the questions you're already asking unconsciously. Throughout your day, notice the questions running in the background of your mind. Why is this so hard? What's wrong with me? Why can't I ever catch a break? What if this doesn't work? These are commands to your subconscious, and your subconscious is obeying them, proving them, manifesting them. So catch them, notice them, and replace them. Second, deliberately ask questions that assume your desire fulfilled. Not occasionally, not just during your practice time, but throughout your day. When you wake, why do I feel so alive and purposeful today? When you work, how is it that opportunities flow to me so easily? When you interact with others, why do people respond to me with such warmth and respect? When you rest, how is my life unfolding more perfectly than I imagined? Each question is a command to your subconscious. Each question creates an open loop that must be closed through manifestation. Third, ask these questions in the state I call the silence. Before sleep, when your conscious mind is quieting and your subconscious is most receptive, ask your questions. Not desperately, not hoping, but knowingly. Ask as the person who already has the answer, because they're already living the reality the question assumes. Why am I so blessed? Asked in the silence, with feeling from the state of being blessed, impresses your subconscious powerfully. And your subconscious, receiving this impression as you drift into sleep, works all night to make it manifest. You wake to find circumstances rearranged, thoughts shifted, opportunities appeared, the answer to your question becoming visible. Let me give you examples of the kinds of questions that command manifestation. These are not questions of doubt, not questions of seeking, but questions that assume the desired state and command your subconscious to prove it. For wealth, why does money flow to me so naturally? How is it that I'm always abundantly provided for? Why do I feel so financially free? For love, why am I so deeply loved? How is it that I attract such wonderful people? Why does love find me wherever I go? For success, how did I manifest this so easily? Why does everything I touch succeed? How is it that opportunities appear exactly when I need them? For health, why do I feel so vibrant and alive? How is my body healing itself so perfectly? Why is wellness my natural state? Do you feel how different these questions are from will I have money? Or can I find love? Or how do I get healthy? The first set assumes. The second set doubts. The first set commands your subconscious to prove fulfillment. The second set commands it to prove lack. Choose your questions wisely, because they are choosing your reality. Now let me show you the most powerful type of question. The one that shifts your entire identity, not just your circumstances. These questions don't ask about having something. They ask about being someone. Who am I now that I live in such abundance? Who have I become that everything flows to me so easily? Who am I that people respond to me with such respect and admiration? These questions force your consciousness to occupy a new identity, not to hope for it, not to wish for it, but to be it in order to answer the question. You cannot answer, who am I now that I live in abundance, without assuming the identity of someone who lives in abundance. And the moment you assume that identity to answer the question, you are dwelling in that state. You are being that person. You are impressing that consciousness on your subconscious, and your subconscious, receiving that impression, must make it manifest. This is the ultimate form of mind control. You are controlling what identity your mind occupies, and your identity determines your reality, always. Now you will ask these questions, and your current circumstances might contradict them. You'll ask, why am I so wealthy? And look at an empty bank account. You'll ask, why am I so loved? And wake up alone. You'll ask, why is everything working out perfectly? And face obstacles. And your conscious mind will say, this is ridiculous. The question doesn't match reality. But here's what you must understand. The question isn't describing your current reality. It's commanding your future reality. You're not asking to get information. You're asking to give instruction. Your subconscious doesn't care whether the answer exists in your current circumstances. It only cares about finding or creating an answer. So when you persist in asking, why am I so wealthy? Despite seeing lack, your subconscious begins to search for wealth, to notice wealth, to attract wealth, to create wealth. The outer world must eventually conform to the inner questioning, but you must persist. You must ask from the end. You must assume the question is valid even when appearances deny it. Because the moment you let appearances dictate your questions, you're back to asking, why am I so poor? And your subconscious obeys that command instead. Hold to your questions. Ask them persistently. Feel them deeply, and watch as your reality rearranges itself to answer them. Let me give you one question that encompasses everything I've taught tonight. One question that, if asked persistently from the proper state, will transform your entire life. Why is my life unfolding more beautifully than I ever imagined? Think about what this question assumes. It assumes your life is unfolding. Present tense. Happening now. It assumes it's unfolding beautifully. Not struggling. Not barely surviving. Beautifully. It assumes it's exceeding your imagination. Not just meeting expectations, surpassing them. And it asks why. Which commands your subconscious to search for evidence, to notice beauty, to recognize perfection, to dwell in the consciousness of life unfolding magnificently. If you asked only this question, persistently, feelingly, from the state of one whose life is indeed unfolding beautifully, your entire reality would shift to match. Because your subconscious, hearing this command day after day, would have no choice but to close the loop by making it undeniably true. Tonight before you sleep, I want you to choose one question. Just one. A question that assumes your desire is already fulfilled. A question that stirs feeling within you. A question that comes from the state you wish to occupy. It might be, why am I so blessed? Or how is everything working out so perfectly? Or why do I feel so deeply fulfilled? Whatever question resonates with the state you're claiming, ask it. Not once. Ask it repeatedly as you drift into sleep. Let it be the last conscious thought before you surrender to the subconscious. Why am I so blessed? Why am I so blessed? Feel it. Mean it. Ask it from the state of being blessed, not from the state of wanting blessing. And as you fall asleep with that question saturating your consciousness, your subconscious mind begins its work. It searches, it rearranges, it creates, it manifests. All night long, beneath your conscious awareness, it's closing the loop. It's finding the answer. It's making the question true. And you wake to discover your reality shifting. Not dramatically all at once, perhaps, but shifting, moving, rearranging itself to reflect the consciousness you commanded through your question. Do this every night. One question, asked persistently, felt deeply from the end, and watch your life transform. Your questions are commands to your subconscious mind. When you ask, why can't I succeed? You command proof of failure. When you ask, why am I so blessed? You command proof of blessing. The properly formed question assumes the wish fulfilled, evokes feeling, and comes from the state you wish to occupy. Ask these questions persistently before sleep.